The situation has been that over probably 25 years, not I said 20 before, but I've looked back at even into the 90s, and it might even be over, as long as 30 years, I've suffered from depression. And it can be sparked by the smallest thing. It can be sparked by, the fact that you're stressed about something and it just spirals. And that was the case. There was a lot of things going on through my life, marriage, children being born, deaths in the family, job situations, pressure at work, whatever. And what I didn't realise was that the severity of what was happening really was taking control and has basically run my life for 25 years. And there have been some fantastic times, don't get me wrong, but it's always there. And there are certain aspects of it where I didn't remember years of times, because I can't remember sort of 2003 to 2008, for example. I don't have any recollection of anything that went on that sits in my mind, and that includes 5 years of my son growing up. I don't remember stuff because I was so down. Then it got, it's again, you work, you try to get over it, but it's still sitting there. You're still going dark when you're on your own, or even when you're with a relationship or whatever, or work, it's still controlling you, your confidence and everything else, the question things and your emptiness and so forth. And I moved here, 2013. Again, it was maybe a trying to escape what I was feeling in the UK. Still not right though, and went through jobs again. Couple of jobs and so forth, which I was really just doing. I wasn't there. Setting up business, which I didn't do. I ruined because of how I was. We set it up so well, and then my whole illness sort of took over that, and again you get to the stage where you're questioning yourself, you're lying to try and make it right. You think you'll wake up tomorrow and everything will be perfect, and it's not. And you're thinking about suicide continuously, but you're giving yourself an answer of why not. And you get up to the stage of 2 weeks ago. I won't go through everything before that, but I lost a relationship with someone that I love dearly because of it, and no fault of anyone else's apart from myself. I was helped by one of the British dads because I became homeless and everything, and things spiralled around about September, October. But I was helped by. This is the first time I made contact with British dads. I think you sort of saw the posts, and one of the dads was kind enough to take me in and look after me and became a good friend. As I say, I'm not going to mention who these guys are, but they know who they are. And then you thought, right, okay, I can go out on my own again, but you're not well, and there's nothing you can do about it. And as I say, it's an illness inside you. It's not anything outside of it. It's no one else's fault. Nothing else made me do what I did. I wanted to kill the illness, and by killing me, if that meant killing the illness, so be it. And that's how bad it got. It got to that night where I was sitting there, and I'd got through Christmas and New Year on my own. I'd been very down. I'd been, if you like, trying to reach out to individuals, but it was not the right thing. That I shouldn't have been doing this with certain individuals. And I got to the stage where I was thinking, I can't see any way out. I really can't. And I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want this illness inside me anymore. I really had hit the wall. And so I and British Dads, as I say, had really made a big point of helping me a few months earlier. Only a couple of dads, but it's more than enough. Doesn't matter if it's one or 1,000, they're all there. And that's the great thing about the group. And yeah, I sat there and I thought, that's it. And so I posted, exactly the words were, hello dads, bye dads, I think it was. And I switched everything off. and I switched off all the internet, I switched off all the phones, I switched off everything. And I'd already planned what I was going to do, and I sort of set myself up to the fact that there was no alcohol involved. I hadn't been drinking. I was fully in control of exactly what I was doing, because all I wanted to do was finished it. And really what I did was I did that. The next thing I know, I've lost consciousness, and don't know I lost consciousness. The next thing I know, I'm being brought back by one of the police, who have got into where I'm staying, into the villa. There's a lot of flashlights and stuff, and I'm sort of there with this belt around my neck, being sort of brought back to life, if you like. I don't know how far away I was from dying, but I know that I'd lost all consciousness, and I was sort of, I was in the process. The bold accounts, they performed CPR on me and stuff. I can only remember lying there sort of with no emotion apart from crying, and feeling, like, it hasn't happened. Well, I think laying the message out to the dads, I didn't want, no one wants to die. Don't get me wrong, no one wants to die. I don't care what anyone says. But there are situations which drive you to it, and this had been a build-up, and I can't thank this man enough. He saved my life, and so did the policeman. And since then, I'll talk about the other bits now. You want to speak to him,
But Vic, obviously you saw that message, and can you explain how you acted on it?
Yeah, so this particular group that Chris talks about, the British Dads group, British Dads Dubai, Chris had reached out to them anonymously, and as have previous dads as well. And there was a message on that Thursday morning from the host to say, we've got a dad, he's in trouble, needs some help. So I'd messaged Chris Bradwell, the host of the group, and said, look, send me his number. Reached out to Chris in the morning, he was tied up, whatever, and I'd had a message off Chris about 6 o'clock time to say, did you call me? So I called him straight back, and we had a chat. And I think it was about 6:40, 6:50, something like that Chris and I had last spoken. And it was only about 8 o'clock time that then this message then came up on the group. 2nd of January, so a day after New Year's Eve, we're all a bit tired, and I was sat there and I was watching this, and I said to my wife, I said, this is quite alarming. And the flurry of messages from all the dads started coming in. And I'd called Chris, everything was off. He's last seen his WhatsApp at whatever time it was, 8:17, shortly before the message went up. So as the evening's now progressing, the concern from the other dads is becoming more and more. I'm becoming more and more alarming. And there was a suggestion on the group that we need to get the police involved. And I believed at the time that I was the last to speak to Chris, and that was the case. I initially called 999, they referred me to 901, and got through to CID, and it was a voicemail. And initially I experienced not resistance, but to get through to the system. And I remember hanging up the phone, and I said to my wife, do I really want to do this? I may need to go down to Jubilee Police Station. And I just had this perception that was the wrong perception. And my wife said to me, she said, look, if you can live with your conscience, if something happens to Chris, and it was with that moment that I jumped out of my chair, walked into my office at home, persisted and called 901 again, called 999, managed to speak to a lieutenant, explained the story to them in the background and how concerned we are. And then, of course, it started. And literally every 30 minutes from that point, I was getting a call from various people within CID, senior officers, calling and saying, look, we're trying to find this guy. And I can't talk publicly about some of the tools and mechanisms that they use. And within the group then, I was keeping the group up to date and said, look, I've spoken to the police when the updates came. And some of the dads were abroad and they were trying to contact Chris. One particular dad was sat in his car outside following the messages, and to the point where if an address was found, he was going to shoot straight over there. And I'm talking now, it's close to midnight. The police have told me there's nothing you can do, just hang on. At 1:45 in the morning, early Friday morning now, late Thursday night, I get a call of one of the officers that was at the team who went to the villa where Chris was. They'd got into the villa, tried to get into the room, and the door wouldn't open because of where Chris was. So they acted very quickly, came out, found a ladder, went up through the balcony, went in through the balcony and found Chris. And at that point, or shortly after that, the officer called me and said, Vic, we've just found Chris. And let me tell you now, it was just in time, literally just in time. Again, I can't go into too much detail about the circumstances in which Chris was found, but they said any longer, and we'd be having a very different conversation. At that point, first of all, the sense of relief that went through me. I mean, here's a guy that I've never met before, but the emotions that run through you as an individual, the adrenaline that runs through you because you feel helpless. I felt so helpless that I can't do anything. And what emerged very quickly through the evening was that this guy's going to take his life. Because I'd spoken to Chris that evening, I had a sense of how he was feeling. He'd spoken about depression, he'd spoken about being out of work, and I'd offered my help. Chris, being Chris, thanked me for the help that I'd offered to tie him over for 2 or 3 months, but came back to me and said, thank you, but I can't do this. That was the earlier message. And so when you don't know somebody and you've had these conversations, it became very uneasy. After I posted the message on the group at 1:45 in the morning, within the space of about 2 hours following that, I was inundated with messages on my private mailbox from fellow dads that were following this around the world, waiting to see what happens and making sure that this guy that they've never met is okay.